Joined here by Alton Dillard. You recognize him as the longtime spokesperson for Denver elections, taking us inside that process, which tonight was delayed briefly for dinner. Folks got to eat. They work hard, you know?
Yes, they do work hard at Denver elections.
So here we have a situation where it looks like we're going to have Mike Johnston and Kelly Brough in the runoff. And all of a sudden, in a field of 16 candidates, their ideas did not seem all that dissimilar from one another. But now we're going to begin to see the contrast between the two of them. You have had a front row seat to Denver elections for a long time. What do you think that voters are going to be looking for as they begin to parse the positions of two people who, again, have a lot in common?
Yeah, they do have a lot in common. The two things that I would be on the lookout for is which candidate represents essentially the through line from Hickenlooper to Hancock into the future versus which one has maybe a slightly more progressive bent. But as you mentioned, you know, both people leading right now are both well funded, which is not a shocker in the American political system. So that's been one of the things that's been so interesting to watch on the social media chatter tonight. Is like, oh, there's big money in politics. It's like,
yeah,
really?
Who knew? So, okay, I know who you're talking about when you talk about the through line from Hickenlooper to Hancock to the future. Through line is a nice way of saying status quo, right? Status quo would be the pejorative. Through line's a nice way to do it. Which of the two candidates is the through line, the status quo candidate?
I would definitely have to, you know, just because of her prior city experience, put Brough in that camp.
Yeah.
But then again, you have Mike Johnston, who does have the backing of the out-of-state folks. Yeah, I wouldn't put him quite as corporate a setting, but also just think about him in terms of maybe some of his boots on the ground community work and things like that. That may be one area of differentiation. And like I've been saying on some of the earlier shows, you know, there may be some voter fatigue, or there may be people just saying there's so many candidates in this first election, let's let the field winnow itself, and then we'll be able to see a bit better differentiation. But the other thing to keep in mind, since we haven't gotten to the 10 o'clock numbers yet, let's not forget that Denver's voter demographic is skewing much younger, and they have a tendency to vote on election day, and then also the geography that we've talked about with far northeast Denver, Montbello, Green Valley Ranch, and those areas where people tend to vote in person. Whether they're going to turn out at a rate that's going to close any of these gaps or flip anything, that's, you know, total conjecture, but I would say keeping an eye on the numbers.
Yep. And as we look at those numbers, we remember that unlike a lot of runoff elections around the country, Denver will often see a larger turnout for the second round of voting than the first, when people really decide to engage. That doesn't happen everywhere in the country. That's kind of a cool thing. So if you've been one of the couch sitters, jump on board, because pretty soon you're only going to have 2 to learn about instead of 16.